In a world filled with conflict, in a universe comprised of differences, there's one thing that absolutely everything shares in common. We all exist. Including two guys named Jack and Michael, who like to chat about that very thing over a good cup of coffee. Let's pay them a visit, shall we?
Existence Brewing.
First, yes, finally here before. Never mind, ma'am. It's none of your business. Just let me revel.
Oh, what were you yelling at? Who was that?
I was just publicly exclamating that I was first for once.
Yeah.
I'm always behind you.
You tell
well,
that
let me
Karen
rephrase
who's
that.
boss.
Otherwise, all of our detractors will use it. I'm always behind him.
Yeah.
I'm always behind schedule. You're always here before me. There.
I have a relative named Karen who really takes offense to the whole Karen
thing.
And
I
it's
went to high school with several Karens, and I've wondered about them since all that started.
Yeah. Ooh, I see they got the matcha latte with maple bacon back on the menu today.
Oh,
all
yeah,
right.
because there's nothing like bacon-flavored coffee.
Mm-hmm.
As long as there's maple in it.
Well, it says that it's true. It's a true Canadian delicacy with matcha latte paired with crispy maple bacon strips. I wonder if they're like the what was that little like the fake bacon? I guess it was bacon bits. Remember bacon bits or Bacos? Yeah.
Bacos, yeah. That was the brand that made them. Bacos, bacon bits. Not a lick of bacon in them. Not even close to being meat. Completely synthetic.
Kind of like sizzling.
Yeah, I think last year we missed the poutine latte because I was on vacation or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard about it too. I guess they had a line out the door for that one.
Yeah, it's kind of tough to get the cheese curds to stand up too long on the top of hot coffee, though. They tend to want to melt. You know that's coming. You've seen the Sonic thing, right? You watch enough television and certainly enough sports, unfortunately, still that you've had this pitched at you.
No, what is it?
The dill pickle meal from Sonic.
Yeah.
With the burger that has it's grilled with dill, and then they put all these pickles on it, and it's a pickle infused bun, and then there's pickle tots, and then of course to top it off, the coup d'etat, like the thing that makes you want to beat your own head with a mallet the most, is this pickle slush drink.
That's the thing.
Pickle boba. What are those things called?
Boba tea.
Boba tea. Yeah, those little pickle boba tea things floating around in it. So it's literally pickle everything. It might be a little overkill on the dill. And who the fuck is going to drink something that's pickle flavored, that's icy? That sounds disgusting. I know there are a few examples of grandfathers. Like my mom used to tell a story about how every morning my paternal grandfather got up and drank a glass of buttermilk, a big glass of buttermilk to start his day. But he was
disgusting.
A farmer. He would roll up his sleeves, and take heed of the hands and arms that looked about 50 years beyond their
Now I know where
age,
you get that from.
And then just proceed to just immediately, just quickly chug a whole glass of buttermilk. And so the same stories can be regaled about, those people in the family. And it's always grandfathers or grandmothers because it's a time-honored tradition that's long since gone. Oh, yeah, they drank pickle juice every single day. And so, yes, while some people actually do drink and enjoy drinking pickle juice, it's rare. And it's rare enough that you shouldn't be making a pickle-flavored slush beverage with little pickle-flavored boba tea things floating around in it. That's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen, and yet there it is. And so the savory lattes are coming. They are. I've known that for years.
Yeah. So have you ever had cod liver oil?
Every time someone talks about cod liver oil, I think about syrup of ipecac. I almost said that. Couldn't say that. Syrup of ipecac, which is designed kind of like cod liver or castor oil. I think it's designed to make you puke instantly when you have to.
Oh, yeah, that's gross.
Yeah. No, never had that stuff.
So when my wife and I were first dating, I was over at her in-laws' house, and actually, no, her in-laws. No, it wouldn't have been that. It would have been her uncle's house, and they had children that were like 4 or 5 years old at the time, and they had this like bottle of cod liver oil in their refrigerator. And I remember going, "That's a thing? Like, is that a joke?" Oh no.
It's a thing.
We give our kids a spoonful of cod liver oil every night before they go to bed, so they've got these essential vitamins.
I want to say iodine is big in cod liver oil.
Of course, I immediately went back to like my mind in Mary Poppins when they have like a spoonful of this stuff, and I was like, "Can I have one?" Just so that I can say that I've tried cod liver oil. And they were like, "You're serious, right?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, you feed it to your children. So what's the big deal? I want to try this stuff." And of course, then, the uncle started bristling. "Oh yeah, no, it's really good. It's good for you." Yeah. Of course, he had probably never even had a spoonful in his life, but he's feeding it to his kids. And so, yeah, no, I had some, and it's vile stuff. I mean, why would you do that?
Liver of a fish.
Yeah. So anyway.
Do you take any supplements?
I do. I just started the Groons regimen.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
So you're going to love this because I know your theory on gummies, but they're gummies. It's a packet of gummies.
Of course they are, because they probably don't give you a choice to actually take a pill.
No. And so there are these little packets of like 8 gummies, and it's like a daily vitamin, and they don't taste that bad. They're actually pretty good. And
8 gummies. Are they different colors and flavors?
No, they're all the same flavor. It's all the same formula. But it has like a bajillion different vitamins in it, and it's supposed to help with like memory and with all these different, digestive, probiotic deals.
Every part of your body,
everything
is now covered by a gummy.
It is literally like you eat one of these packets of gummies, and you're only supposed to have one packet a day, but you eat a packet of these gummies, and it's like having a full. It's like when you take your car in for like a full injection cleaning. You just feel like you're getting an all for one trip.
All right. So backing up to the cod liver oil.
Yeah.
I take a handful of supplements every night. They're selective. They're not like the all fuel injection cleaning gummies that you're taking now. But so I take fish oil every night. It's quite beneficial. And I used to take flax oil, but my doctor actually she didn't have me switch, but she said, you might take fish oil because it has a few other benefits. And even though flax is really good for your heart, she said you could take both, but you might be doubling down a little too much on, not that it's going to hurt you. But anyway, so I take fish oil. A lot of people take fish oil. They're capsules, and you swallow them like a regular grown human being does. They're not gummy fish capsules.
That would be disgusting.
Them. And so, but in reading about it quickly on my phone, that's tantamount to cod liver oil. So cod liver oil is just the old-fashioned way of taking fish oil, which millions of people around the world do. And there's all these studies, of course, linking specific kinds of fish oils. I took something called skate oil for a while because that had been linked to decrystallizing the pineal gland. And I was very interested in doing that because the pineal gland, it crystallizes prematurely because of the fluoridation of the water system. We don't have to go off into RFK because that was a thing a long time before he came along, because just read about it. Okay. The Nazis were looking for a way to zombify a population, but still keep them lucid enough to pull and run all the machines and pay their taxes. And they discovered that just the right amount of fluoridation in the water system will do that. And strangely now, from this regime, there's a call to undo that, which I'm still trying to wrap my fucking head around. But anyway, so I was interested in decrystallizing my pineal gland because it's been under assault from that and other things, food additives, and there's a lot of things that will do that. And your pineal gland is your master gland. It's supposed to be the gland that physically attaches you to the remembrance that you are an eternal being that is capable of anything in any form. And it's way too strong for just the average person to possess. So they only want politicians that are high ranking enough, and, you know, people that run mega corporations and have all this money or in this special clique. They only want them to have it. So I took that stuff for a while, this skate oil, and it was interesting because my dreams definitely got wild for a few weeks when I started taking it. But then I started having heart palpitations and I quit taking it. And then I started taking it again at another time, and it didn't seem to have the same effect. But what was interesting about the heart palpitations is I still can't say that they were linked entirely to the skate oil, but I have a feeling they were, because I was reading one of the metaphysical side effects of the metaphysical world when you're having a spiritual awakening that's gradual is you'll have heart palpitations, because your heart is physically trying to align with its ability to conduct spiritual energy in a larger way. And so your physical heart is attempting to adjust to this as you're opening your heart chakra more and more. So it's a physical side effect. And as I read, it's very upsetting for some people, especially those who are gifted with anxiety like me. And so you don't want the adverse side effects of the spiritual awakening. You want the awakening, but you don't want your body to, so you're constantly juggling it. Anyway, it was an interesting time, to say the least. So, and I would imagine the best way to give kids, like you're talking about cod liver oil now, would be for Smuckers to make it, and you can just put it on a fucking Sunday before they go to bed.
Yeah.
So it's time for your nightly ice cream with the cod liver oil from Smuckers. Oh, yay.
Or
As
just
long as it's
have
sweet
like
enough, they'll eat
Dutch
it.
Bros inject it into the smoothies that the kids get, so that it's like fluoride in the water supply. You just put cod liver oil in the smoothies.
I think Sonic should make a cod liver oil slush
Ooh,
drink.
there you go.
And it can have little fish-shaped like poppers in it that they're oil, and you can suck them up, and then they pop with a burst of flavor in your mouth, like
Yeah.
Chewels. You remember that gum? They used to have the shit in the center.
Yep.
Chewels.
Mhm.
God, I miss Chewels. What I wouldn't give to chew on one piece of Chewels. They don't make it anymore. Why? I have no idea. It was the grossest gum, but it was the stupidest idea. The center is this pussy, this suppurate liquid. Your gum is suppurate in the middle with this nasty, cloying, cinnamon flavored shit. But it's just like, I want Chewels. So,
Hey, back to the pineal gland. There was a few videos that I ran across online not too long ago, and I was actually meaning to bring this up to you in our conversations, because there are a lot of videos now talking about pineal gland activation and decalcification, and there's a few of them that actually like play these frequencies. It's like 963 hertz,
right?
And it's supposed to be a way for you to I don't know. There's just kind of like a white noise kind of a feeling.
Sound therapy.
Audio therapy. Yeah, like
I've messed with that. It's interesting.
It is. And so, have you ever had any luck with that? Or I know that you've had a struggle, you said before, with like meditation, and that's something that recently I've started to get more involved in, especially when now that I have a sauna.
Right. Sauna, that would be a hard place for yours truly to meditate, because I don't care for enclosed spaces or heat. They trigger my anxiety.
You had mentioned that, but no,
my native American friend from when I was a lot younger, he used to build sweat lodges in his backyard, and oh yeah, come on over and we'll do a sweat lodge. And I'd get in there for him, but God, my contact lenses would just literally melt into my face. I swear they were gone when I got out of that thing. It was just hot and uncomfortable. I've never
smoky
liked that. So, yeah. So the sound therapy thing, it's weird because there's a lot of frequencies online. Of course, most of the time you run into this first on YouTube when you're trying to sleep or when you're trying to relax. Mm-hmm. And there's all these, and it talks about the hertz that they're at. And I can't profess to know everything about that range, but I just know that I've listened to, or I've subjected myself to, for as laboratory as that sounds, a lot of different frequencies. And while many of them don't seem to have much of a conscious effect, there are a few that I either really enjoy, like as soon as I hear the vibration, there seems to be a physical reaction, or at least a mental awareness of, this is good. Like, I like this. And just the same, there are a few frequencies I've run across that are absolutely just evil. And I don't believe in evil, as you know. I'm not that guy. I mean, I feel like evil is entirely subjective based on what anybody would think of another person or thing's actions.
There's just
so adverse. I'm not into this. Like, I don't think evil was created as part of the universe. I'm the neutral universe model guy. If evil's a thing, it happens along the way by creation of creation. It doesn't happen because of creation. So I'm not a yin-yanger. I don't think darkness has to exist for there to be light to the same degree. Anyway, so it's the only way I know how to describe the frequencies that I run across. They're just, you toss the headphones. You're like, just get it off my head immediately. It's awful. So,
well, and what is some of the bowls? There's like a bowl.
The singing bowls.
Yeah.
Yeah, the singing bowls.
I've run across
some of those
in
Mount Shasta when I was just there, not recently. So
it's one of those, like, it is definitely a feeling that you get. And I found that meditation a lot of times is easier in some of those paths, because I feel like there's a lot of different pathways to meditation. But it seems like some of those I think some people have a more sensitive feeling to audible frequencies. I think that's a good way to get into that mind.
Yeah, no, I definitely. Everybody kind of has their flavor, and some people who run in the crystal huggy crowd have a lot of them, I suppose. I wonder sometimes if some of them aren't coerced or convinced, self-convinced in some ways, like any subculture would be. But it's definitely interesting. I mean, the pineal gland is just really fascinating in and of itself. There's a number of things you're supposed to be able to do to like help it heal, but basically what I read was no matter how much skate oil you take or how much turmeric is supposed to be really helpful, aid in the process of decrystallizing your pineal gland. But once it's gone to a certain point, it's kind of like snowball Earth. When there's an ice age, and if it comes far enough down to the equatorial regions, it's never going back. And basically you have snowball planet forever until the sun swallows it. So it's kind of the same thing from what I've read. Once it's too far gone.
When you start to meditate, I'm starting to wonder, what is it that I need to be, I guess,
focusing on?
Well, and that's the problem, is that you're not supposed to focus on anything.
No, you're supposed to clear your mind.
You're supposed to let your process just take over. And you're supposed to allow that to just play out how it will, and not try to focus too much on one thing or another.
Well, when we talk about meditation now, we start to get into the territory of the theorized separation between the brain and the chemistry of thought and the actual lucidity of existential thought, of connected thought, of universal thought. And there's an interesting line by Deepak Chopra. And remember, I'm also the guy that wants to get everything from source. So I've stayed away from these guru types, not reading anything, not watching stage presentations most of my life, because
there's a lot of them.
Well, there are a lot of them, and there's nothing against them. It's just, I sort of received the message, if you will, a long time ago. You don't need these people. You'll get all the answers you need by just existing, by just being here. So
well, and the good ones will admit that.
Well, and no offense to Wayne Dyer fans, but I remember I was in the company of someone for a while years ago who was just gone on Wayne Dyer. Oh, you got to watch this. Oh, you got to read that. So I watched a few things. Really, he seemed like a kind of a cool dude, but all he did was just parrot the words of other gurus. all he did was talk about, he copied lines from all these masters that he'd studied with in the Far East. And I just thought, well, there's no need, as we talk about intellectual property, there's no need for his ego to have an individual, this is a shared rhythm. I get that. But it seemed that it would just seem to me like there'd be something that would come directly from him. I would expect more, okay, source gave this to me, like my downloads. That's the way I see it. It's just like, okay, they're not mine. They're for anybody that might tap into the same branch on the tree and shake it to get something off. But I just feel like it's that connection that I'm interested in. So if I'm going to watch you or listen to you, I want to hear about your connection.
Right.
I don't want to hear about somebody else's all the time. Once in a while is fine. But anyway, Deepak Chopra is, I don't know if it's a famous saying of his. I just remember it's one of the things I heard him say in the limited time that I've spent watching that stuff, when he's talking about thoughts. And forgive me for doing, but he's Middle Eastern, and so I can't help myself. He says, thoughts, they're just thoughts. That's all. What are they? They're just thoughts. And it's just like, okay, but that's a little too easy, because, in my estimation, this is the way Jack sees it anyway, from his connection to source or God or spirit or universe or whatever you want to call it, the big U, is that having a thought of any kind immediately not only makes it possible, but it makes it real. It may not be tangibly extant in some way. It may not, be right there for you to touch in some tactile way or listen to, or it's not in this space necessarily, but anything you can dream, as they say, anything that you can think, okay, you literally just touched on something that became real. If even for just a moment while you're daydreaming or while you're skipping from one thought to the next through, fields of flowers, and then all of a sudden it becomes a grim landscape because your mood changes, or I don't know. But to me, that's where I've always been at. It's just because what are we except the same thing?
Thoughts.
I mean, I don't know how you would define our presence here, except for we are the perpetuation of something or someone's thought, an idea that these beings and these things and all this stuff that's in our world can exist. And instead of leaving it to a whim, like, yeah, it'd be interesting, and then moving on, it somehow became something that it happens in perpetuity, something that continues to evolve, as we would say. And so I have a problem. I've always had a problem with what are thoughts. They're just thoughts, but there's so much more than that. And I know he's talking about, I think he was trying to chasing out negative thoughts or chasing out evil thoughts, or really. But the thing is that the same rules apply. It's what you do with the thought. I mean, I think it's how you acknowledge the thought, and it's what you do with it once it's there. But there are people who have quote unquote mental disorders that, that can't stop thinking terrible, dreadful thoughts of all different varieties. And so then that would say, all right, what about them, Jack? Well, boy, I'll tell you, that's an accursed state, but I can't help but think I've got to stay, hard line to my argument that those thoughts, if they're not coming from somewhere else, if there's not a demon, for lack of a more scientific term, if there's not something that's projecting those into the mind or into the experiencer's conscious state, then they're actually being brought in by choice. This person, for whatever reason, has a switch that's flipped, whether by choice or by some kind of fated design, or I don't know if it's a flaw. Is anything flawed, really? And these things, because they're able to be conjured by what we would call thought, they're real to some degree. And that's upsetting, of course, because we don't want those awful things to be real. Well, but then it's what you do with it after the fact. We've all thought about doing a terrible thing, haven't we? We've all been pissed off enough at something and had that rage fantasy. We've all had that. I don't think anybody's immune to that. I think we've all thought about doing something, even if it's just taking the penny candy or the lollipop because we want it, and the grown-up won't give it to us when we're a kid. We've all had some. That's not very nefarious, but it's sealing, and so it's not progressive. So we've all had regressive thoughts, no matter how extreme they may seem. But how many of us act upon them? I think that's the critical juncture between our existence in this space as these things and this thing that's thought, that's really this projection of everything that is possible. And sometimes these things that we dream up, they're far-fetched. We'd have to be movie monster creators, or we'd have to make a diorama of it or a video game to kind of make it real, because it would be hard to make some of these fantasies real. But in some cases, we can absolutely perpetrate these things that we think of. And that's the crossroads between, am I bringing this thought and the karma and all of the ramifications that go with it into this space, or am I leaving it as just a thought?
Well, and I think that they're going back to kind of what you had alluded to, which is, a lot of times they tend to, gurus will shape their instruction based on, trying to get people who are having an issue with anxiety. That's why they're seeking out the meditation to begin with.
Sure, and you're talking to one of them.
And so,
right here,
therefore, they're saying, okay, well, your thoughts are just thoughts. They're nothing more than that. But I feel like once you have kind of gotten through that idea of, the universe is at your fingertips. The universe is within you, and you are able to go anywhere and do anything within yourself and within your mind. And I think that then that's where you're like, okay, well, where do you then take it from there? And that's what I was referring to too, is it's like, is there a next step? Or is that something that in essence is reaching the universal field? Is that there is no thing that you can do from there. You are seeking. Some of us will reach that point, some of us won't, and that's where you're going back to that. Okay, thoughts are thoughts are thoughts are thoughts. But once you reach the universal field, what is it that you're supposed to be doing to challenge yourself? Is what I'm saying.
You're talking about Carl Spackler when he caddied for the Dalai Lama himself. And he stiffed him at the end of the
Hey,
18s.
Lama.
Hey, Lama. Something.
A little something for the efforts.
And he said, oh, there won't be any money. But when you die on your deathbed, you will receive total consciousness.
Yeah, right.
So I got that going for me, which is nice. And it is. So what you're talking about to me kind of goes to the totality of consciousness. It's suddenly I am acutely aware from the baseline of existing at all that I am one with this universe, this big U that we talk about, this thing that, again, I always talk about, we are an inextricable part of, and it's an inextricable part of us. You can't remove the energy that makes me, whatever that spark is, and not completely shatter whatever it is. We go together. We're a team. And so are all things that exist, from the micro to the macro, that can be seen in this space and even perceived. See, even those thoughts in my mind, and if you're a believer in the Akashic record, then all of those thoughts already exist. Something has already put those pieces together. And so there is no individual thought. There's only thought that can be plucked from the branches of the universe. But our balancing act, our challenge in this equation as humans walking through this experience, is to figure out a way to balance the sense of self, the sense of individuality, the sense that, okay, I'm a part of it, but I'm also separate because I'm Jack Hansen, goddammit.
Right.
And nothing is Jack Hansen. See, and that's a wonderful tightrope to walk every day. I feel like that's one of those things that's so much more engaging than football or monster truck races. And I know you should go see those too, because they're just great. But I feel like a timeout every so often just to contemplate that, because that is, in so many ways, we could just say subconsciously, I guess, but it's so much more than that, of course. But really, in a very insidious way, that is the balancing act that we walk every day. That's the tightrope between this totality that we all sort of know we're a part of, and many people through theology or like you're talking meditation, existentialism, whatever your choice is, want to get more in touch with that, or remember, as I would say, because you're not like down here and then suddenly I'm gaining ground. You're always connected. There's no question about that. You're just remembering that you are, and the degree of that remembrance varies based on your willingness to put your feet in that pond and
To
say, "Hey, I'm here."
participate. Yeah.
But there's also that I'm Michael Elliott, God damn it, and that matters, and it does, and that's what's cool, because both of those things can exist. So yin yang, yes, but not this good evil that we've had our minds drawn on for all, oh, there has to be darkness for there to be light. It's not about that. That's the balancing act. The balancing act, that the way I see it, if we're drawing the yin and yang, is the dark side is the universe, because after all, it's big and awesome, and so much of it is just empty space or a vacuum and amazing. And then the other side, the white side, is waiting to be colored in. It's white, it's colorless essentially, but it's waiting to be colored in with the choice of the native, with the choice of the experiencer, because that's another gift that you're given, the choice to be whatever you want to be defined however you want to be defined, and to define however that definition is defined, right down to it. So, to me, that's why it's hard, I guess, to shut my mind down, because I don't see, perhaps I'm finally realizing, just talking about it, that has always been my struggle with meditation, is that I don't see the difference between the two landscapes. To me, they're all one. And I'm sure there's a quiet space that Jack needs to get into for his own physical health sometimes. I mean, we talk about Empire of the Sun, I don't know if you've ever seen that, but
yeah.
Christian Bale, it's one of my favorite lines in any movie ever, when he's jumping around the boys have come to liberate the airstrip that they're being forced to work at in China after the Japanese invade, and they're coming to bomb the airstrip, and Jim is just dancing, and he's talking about the planes, and the doctor grabs him and says, "Try not to think so much. Try not to think so much." And I can't tell you how much I relate to that, because it's just like, that's exactly what I think of anytime I feel myself spiraling, because of all of these loop-de-loos you can do with, I exist, and then there's thought, and then there's the universe, and is try not to think so much. Get settled in one little space within all that and just be. And to me, that's the best thing I've been able to conjure that rivals traditional meditation, I guess. And sometimes it works, and sometimes I need a Valium.
Well, no, I think that's good. I like it. Well, no, it's a great movie, and that's a great analogy too, because there's a link that I heard between remote viewing and I think what you're talking about, which was this idea that you can step outside of your consciousness, which inevitably is reaching full consciousness, right? But then there is always going to be that tie back to Jack. There's always going to be that kind of that leash back to Jack, because one of the people who was talking about that was, aren't you ever concerned that by reaching out and getting outside of consciousness, you may not be able to come back? And there might be like a missing link, but it's almost like it's ingrained within our being to always have that connection back. There's a leash. It's like you're going outside the space station and you're connected to the space station. And unless, I guess, that was to be severed, you would always be connected back to Jack.
With that really cool silver umbilical cord thing that attaches you to the space station.
Right.
So I would say this about what you just said. I think we have to remember that although I think quantifications in this equation are hard to justify, I think you're always a lot more where the cord attaches to that isn't the Michael Elliott or the Jack Hansen side. Because remember, your experience as these things in this expression is very ephemeral when it comes to eternity. In fact, we have time in this equation. Time isn't real. I mean, I knew that a long time ago. You see, and there's the reference, time, because in this experience, there's a long time ago. But see, there is no a long time ago or a long time from now. It doesn't exist. But spatially, experientially, time is a thing that we drape over the ant farm, basically. It's something that we say, okay, this is a condition of this particular place and time, again, time, this particular experience. It's going to be subject to this thing we call time. So you're on a limit here. You don't get to be Michael Elliott for very long. I don't get to be Jack Hansen for very long. The NDE experiencers, we've talked about this before, or alluded to it at least. You know, I love the ones that I always think about that guy. I saw him on YouTube. It's a great story. You might look it up. I think he was a first responder from California, and there was an endemic in California where a lot of people were getting this bad flu, and he got it bad because he was responding to a lot of houses where people had this flu, and he caught it. And he said he was doing his job, and the next thing he knew, he woke up in the hospital. He'd fainted, and he'd gone into a mild coma, I think, for several days. It was bad. It was kind of touch and go. But he had an NDE during this process. And one of my favorite things that he says in recounting his experience is, like, let's say his name was, I don't remember his name, but let's say his name was Danny Cox. And he says, oh, yeah. He said, I was there. I knew who this Danny Cox fellow was, but I didn't want anything to do with him because I was free of that guy. And he was a good guy. I liked him. I liked being him. But now I was what I really am again. And I didn't want to go back. And they basically said, you have to go back. You're not done being Danny Cox yet. And boom, the next thing he knows, he's waking up and he's Danny Cox for the rest of his life. And now he's talking about his experience as a part of it. But I think that really is a microcosm of what we're talking about. Is we're always so much more than that, this energy that we manifest as these people, these identities that we have here. And we've talked about this too when we talked about death some time ago. And that's the thing that people don't want to let go of. Yeah, they're attached to their stuff, and they're attached to their children and their loved ones. They don't want to see them go. But what all of that is attached to is the notion that I'm, Barbara Phillips of 316 Riverside Drive, Santa Barbara, California, 90185 or whatever it is. That's what we don't want to let go of. It's that identity that's been created both by us and for us in this equation that we have a hard time letting go of. And we do, because we go on to be all these other things. And we've already been all these other things. So I think it's important. I think we're always a lot more of that other side than we are of this persona that we get to carry through this experience. But this is our job right now. This is the agreement we've made, is you're going to come here and be Jack Hansen and do all these things. And that's the part, I guess, that I still grapple with every day is, are you doing your job? Fate and destiny. I'm getting older, so fate and destiny are really starting to punch me in the gut, because there's an incumbence, it would seem, upon you doing a few things while you're here to kind of get it right. You got a checklist of things. Well, you got to take some actions. But there's also, in my experience, at least, is this Jack Hansen thing, it's all lined up. So much of it has just been, listen, don't rock the boat. You don't have to do a lot. You have to do a few things, but you'll know what they are. But most of the things will just walk into your life. They'll just present themselves so that you can do what we sent you there to do. And it's like, okay. But that leaves me feeling like I've been in a place of inaction, like a lot of things have been actionable for a while, and that it's my fault when things aren't moving or things aren't happening or they haven't happened yet, or maybe they haven't happened to a particular degree. So, and that's a common thing. I would think a lot of people worry like, oh, I haven't made much of my life. It's that thing. I don't know about that. I mean, I think that's totally personal. I think that's between you and the big U. Like, it's between you and U, the big U, capital U. But,
Man, they didn't give you bacon bits or bacos on that latte. They gave you a mighty cut of maple syrup, genuine from up north.
tapping a tree.
Yeah.
Maple syrup tapping is really fascinating, actually. Like, have you ever watched a little special or seen something on how they do that? It's
I saw a
pretty cool.
documentary once upon a time.
Yeah, saw the maple syrup tapping documentary.
Oh, it was a documentary about some maple syrup scandal. And organized crime was involved, and it was crazy.
Black market maple
Oh
syrup.
my gosh.
Man, what don't they have their tendrils wrapped completely around? Like fucking black market maple
The United
syrup.
States has the gold standard, and our friends up north have the
Canada.
maple syrup standard. They literally stockpile this stuff in underground secret vaults.
Secret maple syrup. Well,
According to the documentary. And it was one of those things. We talked about documentaries last time, and it got me hook, line, and sinker. I can't remember the name of it, but you've got to check it out.
There are just so many branded, geographically branded foods that come from the Northeast. I mean, you got Vermont maple syrup, Maine lobster, New England clam chowder, Manhattan clam chowder, Boston cream pie, which is fucking cake, by the way. So I don't know what the hell happened there. I mean, so it's just that Vermont maple syrup, but the fight between New England maple syrup, basically that region of the United States, and Canadian maple syrup being, it's the same trees, folks. And the St. Lawrence River may form a natural boundary between what we call the two countries, but all of the lines within are pretty much pissed. It's just BS. So just remember, all the trees are hugging each other. They're in the same cluster, just wondering, what's the deal here? Like, we're all making maple syrup. Why does it matter? Because the thing about the Maine lobster, right? Like how if it's not caught off the coast of Maine, it can literally be the exact same make and model, if you will, zoologically speaking, but it can literally be the same exact species and kind, right down to all those different classifications they have in zoology. It can be the same exact lobster, but if it crawls across that imaginary fucking line between the state of Maine and either, I don't know, Nova Scotia or whatever's above there, or like Massachusetts, or I guess it's New Hampshire that neighbors Maine to the south, it's not a Maine lobster. Maine lobster has to be caught off the coast of Maine in order to be called Maine, and if it's not, it's illegal. And there's a huge, like you said about maple syrup, there's a huge black market trade in lobsters that are not Maine lobsters, but they're called Maine lobsters, and they can get 10 times as much for them because they call them that. And indeed, they are the same fucking lobster, but they're not caught off the coast of Maine, so they're not Maine lobsters. It's ridiculous.
Okay,
and all the lobsters, meanwhile, are looking at each other going, "You believe these human fucks? Like, what a bunch of idiots!"
So they're just walking the line, like you had said before. They're touting that line between being Maine lobsters and being lobsters of Nova Scotia.
That's what I would probably do if I were a rabble-rousing lobster. If I was a really like dissident lobster, I would probably find that boundary line, between Canada and Maine, or between New Hampshire and Maine, and I would just say, "All right, fellas, we're forming a line, 20,000 strong, just straight out to sea, and we're gonna hop over it. Like, oh, we're in New Hampshire. Oh, we're back in Maine. Catch me. Oh, we're in New Hampshire."
So the documentary is called. It's one of those Dirty Money on Netflix. There's a Dirty Money series. They do a documentary on all kinds of things, avocados.
That sounds interesting to me.
Yeah, and there's one that's called the Great Maple Syrup Heist, and these guys stole $18.6 million worth of maple syrup, and it's all coming back to me now. I think it was something that I watched during COVID.
Yeah, that sounds like a COVID rabbit hole if I ever heard
It
it.
does.
Wow, $19 million worth of maple syrup. Well, the trade is probably worth much more than that every year. It's a strange world. So we were talking about all those, like the meditation and the pineal gland and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have any maple syrup there or not, but you can either think about, I guess you can ponder it yourself, or you can go down all the rabbit holes you want to on YouTube or online, or just, search for it in some way, or you can head to Northern California and go to Mount Shasta like I did just recently.
Yes. Let's talk about that.
I was telling you about this and you said you have to share some of this. So there's this, you could call them a dinosaur band. I don't want to get into the whole thing, but there was this band. It was the first super group ever. And they put out an album in 1982 that forged one very popular hit single. And then they disbanded some years later before the 80s were over. Well, the keyboard player kept the band going with a new lead singer. Then the original band got back together 15 years or so after that, and they kicked the other singer out. And so he formed his own version of this band. So now we have two bands. We have the original band, and we have the original band's name featuring this second singer that they had later on. So that incarnation of the band is who Maddie and I went to see in Northern California. That was the onus for the trip. It was at this rinky-dink state fair down there in Shasta County, California. So she'd never seen or been to Mount Shasta. I'd been down there before. And so it was great. We got to go someplace new for, and I'd only been there once. I'd actually been there twice, but once we were just passing through. I was on a bus with a team years ago when I used to do that nonsense. And then the last time was about 5 years ago when I realized I'd never been to Reno. And that was a rabbit hole of mine during COVID, because I went to Reno for the first time during COVID. And that was a strange experience. That was like being in 28 Days Later, the casino years or something like that. It was odd. But anyway, that is a very interesting place. And I wound up in a place very specific there. It's a very large crystal store, very large new age store, as they used to call it, a metaphysical store, that you showed me in a YouTube video right before I went down there. And so it was weird to actually go in this place. Oh, he's a very popular YouTuber.
Peter Santinello.
I would call him People Santinello, actually, because that's his thing. He's interested in people.
Right. And local stories and a very fascinating YouTube channel. Yeah. Check it out.
Yeah, I've watched a few of his vids. They're pretty cool. He's speaking with some of the
locals.
Yeah, the locals. But they're the touched locals. They're the ones that are into all of these very occultist subjects and very non-mainstream. So it's right up Jack's alley. I love that stuff. The problem I found, at least on my very brief visit to Mount Shasta, California, was that I didn't really see too many of those people. There were plenty of people in the metaphysical store, but Maddie and I, we want to go back because we want to make sure that we weren't misconstrued about this. We need to spend more time there to draw a complete judgment, I guess. But
yeah, because you guys were only there for like a few hours, right?
Yeah, we were really just passing through because we had to go to this show, and we were on a timer and we couldn't miss it, and we had tickets and that whole thing. But we just upon our first very cursory visit to this place, we kind of detected a little fakery, that there was a real faux. Yeah, there was a real faux element to the whole crystal huggy thing, because there's money involved, a lot of money involved. Some of the cars that I saw parked on the streets of that town that day. Whew, wow. I mean, I saw an antique Ferrari that it had to have been worth half, maybe $750,000. I don't know classic cars that well, but I know old Ferraris are worth a lot of money. And if that wasn't a replica, that was a very expensive car. Like the kind of car you don't get out, like the Ferris Bueller car.
Right.
Like, it's never driven,
Yeah.
So
it's meant to just be looked at.
Yeah, exactly. But so I don't know. And that's the thing, is that's the case with a lot of places, because that angle for a buck just gets into things, and then the next thing you know, it loses its authenticity, and that's no good, especially with something that's so just seemingly
pure.
Well, pure, yeah. I mean, it's just I'm losing the term that I diametrically opposed is the term, to money and to the notion of money or why we'd need it or want it. These people that are portrayed in this video of Mr. Santinelli's are, they have hopes and dreams and they need cash to do what they're doing like anybody else. They're not completely off the grid because hell, like just try. You can't be. They won't let you. It's really hard. So it's not like there's not some money tied up in their lives, but their pursuits, it's not like talking to people that want to run a Fortune 500 company. Their goal in life is not to have all this fucking money and all this stuff that goes along with it. They're very driven by other things, just for, a very basic and colloquial term. I mean, they're driven by something else. Their experience, what they want their experience to be about something besides the pursuit of money and physical possessions. But they're very into honing their own physical possessions. A lot of these people are, the makers. They like to make things and manufacture. They're very good at it. They showed some beadwork that this one guy who cruised into the scene for a few minutes did. It was amazing. So,
back to the crystal store. You're saying that the supply chain of crystals is not necessarily from Neverland.
No, in fact, Maddie was very much wanting to buy some jewelry there. She'd been looking at some, I think, Celtic jewelry, as I recall, and she'd seen something that she wanted. And then there was a native thing. She's native. She's got native blood, and I know that's a whole different subject that he gets into in a lot of his videos too, this Santinelli character, going to all these reservations where people don't know what's going on and really probably haven't cared, sadly, until now when he starts making these things. So he's looking, and they get into that in a lot of those where, those people are just like, they call themselves just like dogs to the government. They have to prove how much blood quantum they have in order to qualify for, benefits or all these, would-be perks that are supposed to come from the government that rarely do. But anyway, all that aside, it said right on the paper cards that these pendants were like attached to that, not made by indigenous people. It just flat out spells it out. Not made by Celtic people, not made by indigenous people, made in China.
Oh boy.
And, no, with all deference to the Chinese and all of the wonderful things that they populate our Dollar Generals with across America.
Maybe just the supply.
Salute real quick. There we go.
the vendor
Dollar General.
The vendor vetting maybe isn't what one would expect walking into a crystal store.
It was, look, and I don't mean to ride these folks because they're, are they in business for that? And here's the thing, because I have some of that stuff myself. It's not like every single trinket I own came from some source that could be, oh yes, it was hewn in the mountains of Nepal. But no, I mean, I've got plenty of things that are Chinese, but it really was a whole store of it in so many ways. There was just four big, and it was a little disappointing for me. That was all. It was just, I was expecting some things that were a little bit more unique is all, but I'm also kind
less
of
commercialized.
We have these little, Maddie is kind of a tchotchke person. I am not, because they just pile up, but we've got a couple of different collections that have started in our apartment. And one of them is these little stone critters. And it started with the very first gift that she ever gave me, actually. And there were a couple of little critters. There was like this little, I call it a root beer toad, because it's like tiger, I think it's tiger's eye, something, some brown stone, and there's a little toad, and then there's a little acorn, and it started with just those little guys on the windowsill, and then we got a crystal store here in town that she likes an awful lot, and it grew. So now there's a creamsicle jade axolotl, for example, and there's a strawberry quartz little meditating alien who's sitting crisscross applesauce.
So it's like the crystal.
Something else.
The crystal is embedded within the character, so it's kind of
the character. It's literally a piece of rock that's carved.
That is carved
to look like this.
Got it.
So we have this little collection. So, but all we carried out of that store were just a little bunny rabbit and a bear, because we didn't have those in our little friends collection. And so that was it. I mean, literally, I think she spent less than $10 in there, but no jewelry. That was extremely rare for me, because I love to pick up pendants, especially wherever I go, because I'm a big pendant guy. I like to wear necklaces with pendants. Didn't see a single thing that I'd never seen on eBay or Etsy before for really cheap, a lot cheaper than they were going for there. And so while I don't want to bash the business, I salute, the variety of store, as opposed to so many other kinds of stores that like are next door or down the block. I would love to see some things that were sourced a little bit differently. I'd like to see an interest really taken in where this stuff comes from and who makes it. And I'm sure it's, with the volume of sales they do, that might be very difficult. And I'm not a business person, so I don't know, but just a thought, just an idea. Because there's nothing like going to a store like that, or discovering a little hole in the wall and finding something that is truly unique, that has been made, even if not by a local, even if it's secondhand, okay, these weren't just stamped out. They didn't make, they may have made a few of these. It might not be completely unique, but there aren't many of these. And there's nothing quite like that. And that's the beauty of Etsy, is these craftspeople from all over the world get a chance to make, I have some stuff from Etsy that I just adore. I cherish it, because you can't go find that stuff. And I've actually had, so like I said, it's a very preliminary, cursory inspection of this place. I'm not going to pass judgment on the whole of Mount Shasta, California, as being a faux, Fugazi community in that way before I walk around and spend some more time there. But just the experience there was a little bit Chinese. It was a little bit Dollar General for me.
Well, and didn't you say you went to a coffee shop while you were there too?
No, it wasn't
near Shasta. It was maybe in.
It wasn't
Oregon.
there. It was on our way back home. And Maddie, by the way, has officially labeled Bend, Oregon. Neither one of us. Sorry, residents and listeners in Bend, Oregon, but we don't really care for the vibe in your community. Yeah, again, it's just the vibe, and it's just kind of the whole thing. But she, I think, accurately quantified a big chunk of Bend properly, because she said Bend is for the Portlandians that are too good to live in Portland. So they become Bendonians, or whatever you call them.
They have ascended.
We went to this coffee shop, but the people.
I understand that with coffee, they also give you a story.
The fella who rung us out, the fella at the actual front of the counter, great guy. He actually had lived, and he mentioned it. Well, I moved up from Mount Shasta not too long ago. We were just there. And so there was the tie-in. So this guy was great, super friendly, but immediately it was Maddie was still looking at what they had, and I knew right away. I was just I'm just going to keep it kind of basic. And I said, look, can you make me just an iced mocha with plenty of vanilla and half the chocolate that you usually use, because they usually just oversteep it in chocolate, and lots of ice. I like it really cold, and I like it to stay that way. And then here came, again, the Bend connection begins. He's just like, oh yeah, man, we can do that for you. And just to let you know, all of our ice, we send out, there's a Sherpa club here in Bend, and they go out every week for us, and they actually they calve this off of glaciers that are sitting in Sisters, Oregon. And so just to let you know. And then, by the way, the chocolate, that's sourced from a farm on the outskirts of this Peruvian village that the owners go down to about 3 times a year. They got some other stuff down there too, but
I'm sure
it's
they
really
do.
Good stuff. They only put llama manure on it and some guano just to give it a little bit of acidity. And the bats, by the way, that the guano comes from, they're well read. I mean, we give them Tolstoy, and it's just Jesus Christ, I just want a fucking mocha. It was everything. It was just literally everything. So just way, 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 way too into, I appreciate all of it's sourced responsibly and
Yeah.
properly. But there's also a lot of greenwashing that happens with that bullshit, for folks that don't know the term, greenwashing is a BS way that they say, oh no, it's all very environmentally friendly. And it's absolutely not. It's a total lie. It's a sales tactic that a lot of companies use for either their products or their whole operation. And it's called greenwashing. Oh yes, everything is. It's not. It couldn't be further from the fucking truth. It's like you're a subsidiary of Kraft, Heinz, or what, it's not true. So
did your iced mocha with extra vanilla come with a certificate of authenticity?
It should have come with a plaque like that said that from some kind of cedar that they don't make anymore is engraved. And the two people though the guy that made the drink and then his helper back there, they were so rude. I mean, like I said, the guy at the front was aces. He was a 10 out of 10. But the people that made the drink, they couldn't have been bigger Bend snobs.
It's one of those places.
Because it's like, how dare you come into our roastery? You come in here to our roastery, and I had like my pink and aqua like Asics kicks on that I'd been driving around in, and these gray shorts and like this workout shirt. Cause it was just, but then of course I've got my alien pendant on, and, Maddie dresses kind of eclectically similar to me. And so, but we're just who we are, but it was clear that we were outsiders and really outcasts in that world. Just total like, oh, where did you get those clothes? They came from they were made in Vietnam, or they were made in Pakistan, or they made in China. How dare you wear that into our store? So those two were wretched. And there was a woman, the other people in there were just bizarre. It was just, and the straws were agave. It was like agave straws. And I use agave in my coffee when I have 1 cup of coffee a day now. I started drinking coffee a couple of weeks ago. And I'm having 1 cup a day, and I put agave in it, and I put agave in like oatmeal to sweeten it. And it's a great sweetener. It's no better for you than sugar, sadly, but I like it because I like the taste of it. It's really sweet. You don't have to use very much of it. And it's not refined as much as sugar is a lot of times. But anyway, so they had these agave straws. They're labeled. Everything, of course, on the counter is labeled, same thing. Agave straws. I'm thinking, so are these going to be sweet? But no, they're made from the fiber of the agave plant. So... But I'm telling you, it was a dynamite espresso. That was one hell of a mocha. So they get props for that. Maddie didn't like her drink very much at all. I think she said she got used to it. It was very bland, but I'd go back for one of those mochas any day. So,
did you happen to catch a name? What was the man's name at the front? Was it like Morgan? Was it like God. Morgan, or
something like that? I mean, I have no idea. I wouldn't be able to tell you now.
I wanted to mention something real fast about saunas, and we had talked a little bit about meditation, and I had mentioned that I actually do meditation while I'm in the sauna, and I just find it a place to kind of have a very controlled environment where it's just like you're going out to the sauna and utilizing that relaxation space for just kind of like allowing your mind to unwind and do some of these wellness things. One of the things that I ran across was in this article, I believe it was an article by the New York Times talking about this uptick in saunas and how all of a sudden there's this kind of like real explosion in people interested in saunas. And kind of
sauna boom.
It's a sauna boom, exactly. And there was this kind of thought in my mind too: is it's like, why is this all of a sudden becoming a thing? And there's this kind of resurgence in saunas. And when I first say to you the words public bathhouse, well, what comes to mind?
Spirited Away, Japan, and the movie Spirited Away. I can tell by the look that you're not familiar with Studio Ghibli's work.
No, I have seen Spirited Away. I have seen Spirited Away.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. I'm so happy. I thought we had a disconnect there for a second. I'm sorry. It's such an amazing movie. One of my best memories of being with Maddie is centered around that movie because we stayed in this amazing hotel and we were so tired and got in there and she found it and we laid there and ate pizza and just watched that. And we'd both, of course, seen it a million times, but it was great. So that's what I think of. I conjure Spirited Away and essentially just Japan and Japanese culture in general.
Okay, well, that's probably different than what I thought you were going to say. So that's why I had that kind of quizzical look. Well, public bathhouse, when you think of, maybe Roman bathhouse.
There's some other stuff going on in there besides
you just never,
bathing.
You just kind of like not really a real desirable place to be. And
no, that's that. I can see that.
And one of the things that was kind of brought into this conversation was there is this kind of need in our society, and they talk a lot about how like post pandemic, there has been this uptick in personal wellness and people wanting to get back into health and well-being. And for many times or many years, there were actually, before running water was a thing, people were utilizing these bathhouses as a way to clean themselves. And so
in your bathhouse, after all.
Yeah, European countries, they would have public saunas, and there was this way for people to commune and to, utilize this as a necessity to clean themselves. And essentially, the reason they suggest as to why saunas have become such a popular thing all of a sudden is that this digital world that we live in now has really kind of gotten us to start looking back at kind of more of an analog world, a world where things are much more simple and more rooted in nature. Kind of like what we've talked about before with this practice of grounding, where it kind of gets you back into this very primitive sense of, heat and what it does to your body and kind of just this connection back into kind of a primal state. And saunas in many cases have been revealed as kind of a returning back to this very primal need that we have for warmth. And
that's very cool.
Yeah, I thought it was a very interesting article.
I'll share a vision, I guess, and not in the precognitive sense necessarily, but I guess my mind functions similarly to a lot of psychics and seers and soothsayers and people like that who have talked to me about their craft before or their gift, and saying that it comes like a Viewmaster kind of, if you know what that is, the slides or just little short reels. They'll show just the spirit world just conveys with pictures. It's not, remember Kenny Kingsley, I think was his name, the 90s psychic hotline thing. You could call one of those. I mean, he was all about clair audio, and that is a different kind of connection you're supposed to be able to make with the spirit world, where voices can literally be heard. You detect words that are given from the other side. So it's not that there isn't an audible component to the phenomenon, but most of the psychics I've ever gone to or talked to about their gift or their supposed gift, they say, that's what they say. They say it's these pictures. And so this, I guess, is kind of the same thing. But as you're talking about the sauna being this, return, it's almost nostalgic, but that's kind of like the beginning, because then it's like you said, it's a serious effort to backtrack to a simpler day. And what we're doing is we're such linear creatures, because again, we have that timer ticking all the time. I've been born and now I'm going to die, and we don't know when. So it's hard for us to see things or think of things in a way that's eternal, even though we absolutely are, and all the energy that comprises us and everything around us is too. But I think we've talked about this on former podcasts about AI and about how technology in general, now that we've reached AI in particular, could be what walks us back to the answer that we've been looking for. And so as much as we like to, some of us, especially on the spiritual side, we shun it or we eschew it and say it's bad. It's, like I said, I'm trying to give it its just dues, because I think technology walks us back around to the answers that we already know. It could be responsible for that. But the picture I see is an Ouroboros. And if you know what an Ouroboros is, an Ouroboros is just that. It's an ancient symbol for eternity. It's for things that are just constant. And it's the serpent eating its tail. And I have an Ouroboros necklace, and there's a ring that I'd love to have that's an Ouroboros, has little ruby eyes on a snake. And so it's always a serpent, a snake, or a dragon that's got its tail in its mouth. But what comes to me is that's what it reminds me of, is just we're on that part of the cycle. We're on that piece of the tail or the head, if you will, depending on which way you want to go, where we're coming back around again. But there's the important part is that the tail, that the dragon's head or the snake's head, the serpent's head, not choke on its tail. And that's the mishap that can happen when we come around to this point, to this stage where the tail is entering the serpent's mouth. It's pivotal for all of the forces that are at work to make sure that the serpent doesn't choke on its tail. And that is what could happen if we don't use technology appropriately. Because remember, we're the only ones using technology. I mean, yes, you could probably point to limited examples where chimpanzees in some experiment or bears in a laboratory in Russia somewhere are, pushing a key to get a cookie or tell the zookeeper how they're feeling that way. But generally speaking, human beings, we're the only ones using manufacturing, technology. And so it's solely up to us how that is applied and for the intent that it's used for. And I know we go back to that, but that's big in Jack's world. It's one of those big pillars. Your intent means everything because it's the literal disposition of the energy that you set out to use. Doesn't matter if it comes to fruition or not, but if my intent is to do good with technology, good will happen. Even if not via the technology itself, good will still come from this because it was a good progressive intent. If it's not so good, if it's regressive, you know the outcome. So we have to make sure that the tail of the serpent doesn't choke the head, because that could happen as we come back around in this cycle. Anyway, it's just something I thought of as you were talking about.
No, that's great. This kind of has an Alan Parsons cadence to it.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, we were talking about Ouroboros, and one of my favorite Alan Parsons Project albums, not that there's a bad one, I mean, in the bunch, it's all awesome, as far as I'm concerned, but it has an Ouroboros on the cover. It's called Vulture Culture, but I know the bastards at YouTube and Arista Records would flag us in a heartbeat if we use anything off that. So you get Satin Whale instead.
No soup for you.
Yeah, they were. You like prog? You should probably check them out. They were a little bit more mainstream, a little bit more whimsical's not quite the right word, but they were. They're a krautrock band from the 70s, but this one is from an album where they went a little bit more mainstream, but there was still some proggy elements in it. So
I
it's
like
cool.
it.
Good stuff.
All
I want
right.
a name, Satin Whale, too.
Satin Whale. I mean, how can you not like that?
Yeah.
Just
I mean, you think
reeks
about the
of
whale,
prog.
and it's satin. It's just like, damn, that whale's satin. Like,
Yeah.
how does it not stink? Because satin's cloth, and it would, like, take in water.
Well, and who does his dry cleaning? I mean, come on.
The barnacles, like all the lampreys, they just come up and I always called them lampreys. They call them something else now. The little fish that suck on the sides of sharks. And just
Yes.
those things. I thought they were lampreys. But
Well, until we meet again to contemplate such things in the universe.
hey, don't stay in the sauna too long because you'll shrink. And I don't just mean down there.
That's a problem.
Isn't it, though?
See you later.
See ya, man.
Well, it looks like Jack and Michael have finished up their latest chat about all things existence. But if anything they said got your own existence brewing, Be sure and catch their other talks at existencebrewing.com and drop them an email to share your thoughts using contact@existencebrewing.com.
Existence Brewing.